The bus came to a slow stop at the small town square, its brakes making that familiar hissing sound. A young woman in her late 20s stepped down carefully, holding on to the metal railing. Her knuckles were white from gripping too hard. She carried everything she owned in one old duffel bag that had seen better days. The afternoon sun was bright, making her squint as she looked around. This was Clearwater, Wyoming, a town she'd never heard of until 3 days ago when she picked it randomly on a map. It was far enough. That's all that mattered. Her dress told a story she wished it didn't. Once upon a time it had been pretty with small flowers printed all over. Her grandmother had given it to her years ago. Now the colors had faded to almost nothing, and the bottom edge was torn in 2 places. One tear happened when she'd climbed through a window. The other happened when she'd been running. She tried not to think about that night. In her pocket she had $17, 2 tens, a 5, and some coins. That was it. That was everything between her and sleeping on a bench somewhere. The town was having some kind of celebration. There were colorful banners hanging between the streetlights. Tables were set up in the square with red and white checkered cloths. The smell of grilled food drifted through the air, making her stomach growl. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten something hot. People were everywhere, families walking together, kids running around with cotton candy, older folks sitting on benches, talking and laughing. Everyone seemed to know everyone else. It was the kind of small town where strangers stood out, and she definitely stood out. She felt the stares immediately. A woman pushing a stroller glanced at her, then quickly looked away. 2 men standing near a coffee stand stopped their conversation to watch her walk by. A group of teenagers sitting on the post office steps whispered to each other, and one of them lifted their phone. She kept her head down and kept walking. Just find the shelter. That's all she needed to do. Before she'd gotten on the bus in Nevada, a kind waitress at a truck stop had written down an address on a napkin, Women's Shelter on Oak Street. The napkin was crumpled in her pocket now, the ink slightly smudged from her sweaty palm. But she had no idea where Oak Street was. The town wasn't big, but it was bigger than she'd expected. There had to be someone she could ask. The festival seemed to be centered around a large tent with its sides rolled up. Inside she could see tables full of food. Her mouth watered. There were pies, roasted corn, big trays of something that looked like barbecue. People were lined up with plates, talking and laughing. Maybe someone there could help her. She walked slowly toward the tent, trying to look like she belonged. But she knew she didn't. Her shoes were held together with duct tape. Her bag had a broken zipper, and her dress looked like she'd been living in it for weeks, because she had been. As she got closer to the food tent, she noticed a group of well-dressed women standing near the entrance. They wore nice summer dresses and clean sandals. Their hair was done perfectly. They were holding glasses of lemonade and chatting with each other. One of them noticed her approaching. The woman's smile faded. She said something to her friends and they all turned to look. The young woman's step slowed. She knew that look. She'd seen it before. It was the look that said, "You don't belong here." It was the look that made you feel small. But she was so hungry, and she just needed directions. Just a simple answer to a simple question. She took a deep breath and walked up to them. "Excuse me," she said quietly. Her voice came out rougher than she'd expected. She cleared her throat. "I'm sorry to bother you. I'm looking for Oak Street. There's supposed to be a shelter there." The women exchanged glances. The one in the middle, who seemed to be the leader of their group, looked her up and down slowly. It was the kind of look that felt like being examined under a microscope. "This dinner is for town residents only," the woman said. Her voice was cold and flat. "Oh, I'm not trying to eat," she explained quickly. "I just need directions. I'm new in town and I'm trying to find the shelter." One of the other women interrupted with a small laugh. "Yes, we heard you, of course you are." Her face grew hot. She felt tears starting to build behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of these people." "Look at what she's wearing," another woman whispered, but it was loud enough to hear. Where did she even come from? More people were starting to notice now. The attention was spreading like ripples in water. A man near the grill stopped serving food to stare. A teenage girl raised her phone and started recording. Can someone just point me to Oak Street? She asked again, her voice shaking now. 3 blocks that way, the lead woman said, waving her hand dismissively. Though I doubt they'll have room for you. Maybe try the church. The women turned back to their conversation, effectively dismissing her. But the damage was done. People were staring. Some looked at her with pity, which somehow felt worse than the judgment. She was the entertainment now. The spectacle. The person people would talk about later. She backed away from the tent, clutching her duffel bag close to her chest like a shield. Her whole body felt like it was burning with shame. She should never have come to the festival. She should have just found a map or asked at a gas station. She turned to leave, to disappear into the streets and find this shelter on her own. She just wanted to be invisible, but then she heard boots on gravel, heavy footsteps coming toward her. "Ma'am," a deep voice said. "Wait just a minute." She looked up through the tears that were now blurring her vision. A tall man in his late 30s was walking toward her. He wore dusty jeans, work boots, and a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His face was tanned and weathered, with lines around his eyes that came from squinting in the sun. But his eyes were kind. He was already shrugging off his leather jacket as he approached. It was worn and soft-looking, the kind of jacket that had been broken in over years. "It's getting cold," he said gently, even though it really wasn't. He draped the jacket around her shoulders before she could protest. The jacket was warm and heavy. It smelled like leather and fresh air and something else she couldn't quite place. Wood smoke, maybe. It was the kind of smell that meant safety. She looked up at him, confused. Don't worry about it," he said. Then he turned to look at the women who had dismissed her. His expression changed. The kindness was still there, but now there was something harder underneath it. "Shame on you," he said to them, his voice carrying across the crowd. "Your mothers would be horrified at how you just treated this young lady." The lead woman's face went red, but she didn't say anything back. The man turned back and gave her a small smile. "Come on, let's get you some food and figure out what you need." And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt like maybe everything was going to be okay. She stood frozen for a moment, not sure what to do. Kindness from strangers felt foreign now. Dangerous, even. The last time someone had offered to help her, it had come with strings attached. Heavy strings that had nearly strangled her. But this man wasn't pushing. He was just standing there, waiting patiently for her to decide. His hands were in his pockets, relaxed. Not threatening at all. "I don't have money for food," she admitted quietly. "Didn't ask if you did," he replied simply. "This is a community festival. Everyone's welcome. Those women back there just forgot what community means." He started walking toward a different section of the festival, away from the main tent. She hesitated, then followed. The jacket around her shoulders felt like armor against all those staring eyes. They passed more people and she kept her gaze down. But she could still feel them watching, could still hear the whispers following in their wake. "Is that Katie's jacket?" someone murmured. "Who is that woman? Did you see her dress?" Each whisper felt like a small cut. By the time they reached a quieter area with picnic tables, she felt like she was bleeding from 1,000 tiny wounds. The man gestured to a table under a large oak tree. "Sit tight. I'll be right back." Before she could respond, he was gone, weaving through the crowd with purpose. She sat down slowly on the wooden bench, setting her duffel bag beside her. The table was old, with names and initials carved into it. Someone named Tommy had been here in 1987. Someone else had carved a heart with 2 sets of initials. She traced the carvings with her finger, wondering about their stories. Were they still together? Was Tommy still alive? Did they have happy endings? The teenage girl who'd been filming earlier walked by with her friends. They were all looking at their phones, giggling. She knew they were watching the video, sharing it, making fun of her. Her face burned again. She wanted to disappear, to sink into the ground and never be seen again. Minutes passed. The man didn't come back. She started to think maybe he'd forgotten about her, or maybe this was all some kind of joke. Maybe he and those women were all friends and they were laughing at her somewhere. She was just about to grab her bag and leave when she saw him returning. He was carrying 2 plates piled high with food, real food, barbecue ribs, corn on the cob, coleslaw, potato salad, and a roll. He set one plate in front of her and sat down across from her with the other. "Eat," he said simply, then picked up a rib and started eating. She stared at the plate. When was the last time she'd had a meal like this? Weeks, months? In her old life, before everything fell apart, she used to cook meals like this. She used to have a kitchen and a table and normal things. Her hands shook as she picked up the fork. The first bite of potato salad almost made her cry. It was creamy and tangy and perfect. She ate slowly at first, trying to maintain some dignity. But hunger took over and soon she was eating faster. She couldn't help it. The man didn't say anything. He just ate his own food and let her be. When she'd finished half her plate, she finally looked up at him. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome." He wiped his hands on a napkin. "I'm Jake, by the way. I work at the Hayes Ranch just outside town." She hesitated. Should she give him her real name? Or make one up? She'd been using fake names at gas stations and motels, but something about this man made her want to be honest. "I'm Lily," she said quietly. It felt strange to say her real name out loud. "Nice to meet you, Lily." He said it naturally, like they were just 2 people having a normal conversation. "So you're looking for the shelter?" She nodded, taking a sip of the lemonade he'd brought. "Someone told me there was one on Oak Street." Jake's expression shifted slightly. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Well, here's the thing. The shelter closed down about 6 months ago. Funding got cut. The building's being turned into apartments now." Her heart sank. "Oh." That one word carried all her disappointment, all her fear, all her exhaustion. "But," Jake continued quickly, "that doesn't mean you're out of options. The church has a program, and I might know someone who needs help and has a place you could stay." "I'm not looking for charity," she said quickly. "I can work. I'm good at a lot of things. I just need a chance." "I believe you." And the way he said it, she could tell he meant it. "Let me make a phone call, okay? Finish your food." He stood up and walked a few feet away, pulling out his cell phone. She watched him as she ate, trying not to get her hopes up. People made promises all the time. They rarely kept them. Jake talked on the phone for several minutes. She couldn't hear what he was saying, but she saw him nod a few times and gesture with his hand. Finally, he smiled and said something else before hanging up. When he came back to the table, he looked pleased. "Okay, so here's the deal. My boss, Mrs. Hayes, runs the ranch where I work. She's got a guest cottage that's been sitting empty. She says you can stay there for now." Lily's eyes widened. "I can't just—" "Let me finish," Jake said, holding up a hand. "It's not charity. She needs help around the ranch. Basic stuff at first. Feeding animals, cleaning, organizing. She'll pay you fair wages for fair work. The cottage comes as part of the deal." It sounded too good to be true, and things that sounded too good to be true usually were. "Why would she do this?" Lily asked suspiciously. "She doesn't even know me," Jake smiled. "Mrs. Hayes has a saying. She says everyone deserves a second chance at life. Someone gave her one when she needed it, and she's been paying it forward ever since." He paused. "Look, I get it if you're nervous. You don't know me. You don't know her. But I promise you, this is legitimate. No strings, no tricks. Just a job and a place to stay." Lily looked down at her empty plate, then at the jacket around her shoulders, then at Jake's honest face. What choice did she really have? She had $17 and nowhere to go. The shelter was closed. She could try to get to another town, but then what? The same situation somewhere else with no one to help? "Okay," she said finally. "I'll try it." Jake's smile got bigger. "Good, come on, I'll drive you out there. It's about 20 minutes from town." As they stood up to leave, Lily noticed those well-dressed women from earlier watching them from across the festival. The lead woman's expression was hard to read. Anger? Embarrassment? Maybe both. Lily pulled Jake's jacket tighter around herself and followed him toward the parking lot. People were still staring, still whispering. But somehow, with Jake walking beside her and the promise of a safe place to sleep tonight, the stares didn't hurt quite as much. Maybe this town would be different. Maybe this was where her luck finally changed. Or maybe this was just another disappointment waiting to happen. Only time would tell. Jake's truck was old but clean. A faded blue Ford with some rust around the wheel wells and a dent in the tailgate. The inside smelled like coffee and leather. with an air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror that was shaped like a pine tree. Lily climbed into the passenger seat, still clutching her duffel bag on her lap. She couldn't quite let it go. Everything she owned was in that bag. If something happened, if she needed to run, she had to be ready. Jake didn't comment on how tightly she held the bag. He just started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, driving slowly through the festival traffic. "So where are you from?" he asked casually as they left the town behind. Lily watched the houses pass by through the window. "Nevada, Las Vegas area. Long way from home?" "It wasn't home," she said quietly. "Not really." Jake nodded, understanding in that nod that he wouldn't push for details. "Well, Clearwater's not much. We've got one grocery store, one diner, a post office, and a whole lot of ranch land. But it's peaceful. Good people, mostly. Those women back there, they're not the norm." "They seemed pretty normal to me," Lily said before she could stop herself. Jake glanced at her. "You've been treated like that before." It wasn't a question. She didn't answer, just kept looking out the window. The landscape was changing now. Fewer houses, more open land. Fences ran alongside the road, and she could see cattle grazing in the distance. Mountains rose up on the horizon, purple and blue against the sky. It was beautiful, quiet in a way that the city never was. "Mrs. Hayes is good people," Jake said after a moment. "She's tough. Don't get me wrong. She'll expect you to work hard. But she's fair, and she's got a good heart." "How long have you worked for her?" 5 years. Came here when I needed a fresh start myself." He smiled slightly. "She gave me a chance when nobody else would. I was in a bad place back then, made some mistakes, but she looked past all that and saw someone worth investing in." Lily turned to look at him. "What kind of mistakes?" "The kind that teaches you who you really are," Jake said. He didn't elaborate, and she didn't push. They rode in comfortable silence for a while. The road wound through valleys and over hills. They passed another ranch with horses running in a field. A dog chased the truck for a few yards before giving up and trotting back to the farmhouse. Finally, they turned onto a gravel driveway with a wooden sign that read, "Hayes Ranch," in carved letters. The driveway was long, lined with white fences on both sides. At the end of it sat a large 2-story house painted white with green shutters. There were flower beds along the front, full of colorful blooms. Behind the house, she could see several other buildings. A big red barn, a smaller stable, what looked like a garage or workshop, and 2 small cottages set back among some trees. Jake parked near the main house. "Wait here a second. I'll let Mrs. Hayes know we're here." He hopped out and jogged up the porch steps, disappearing inside. Lily sat in the truck, her heart pounding. What if Mrs. Hayes took one look at her and changed her mind? What if this was all a mistake? The front door opened, and Jake came out with an older woman following him. She was probably in her late 60s, with white hair pulled back in a bun and wearing jeans and a work shirt. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd been running a ranch her whole life. Jake opened the truck door. "Come on, Lily, don't be shy." Lily climbed out slowly, still holding her bag. She stood there awkwardly, not sure what to say or do. Mrs. Hayes came down the steps and stopped a few feet away, looking Lily over. But it wasn't the same look those women at the festival had given her. This was the look of someone assessing, measuring but not judging. "So you're Lily," Mrs. Hayes said. Her voice was firm but not unkind. "Yes, ma'am." "Jake tells me you need work and a place to stay." "Yes, ma'am. I'm a hard worker. I can do pretty much anything. Clean, cook, organize, work with animals, whatever you need." Mrs. Hayes nodded slowly. "I believe in giving people chances, but I also believe in honesty. So I'm going to ask you straight. Are you running from something dangerous?" Lily's breath caught. She hadn't expected such a direct question. "I'm running from someone," she admitted. "Not the law, nothing like that. Just someone who wasn't good to me." "An ex?" "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Hayes studied her face for a long moment. "Is this person likely to show up here looking for you?" "I don't think so. I was careful. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I barely knew myself." But you're not certain. Lily swallowed hard. No, ma'am. I'm not certain. Mrs. Hayes exchanged a look with Jake. Something passed between them, some silent communication that Lily couldn't read. Finally, Mrs. Hayes turned back to her. Okay, here's how this will work. You'll stay in the guest cottage. It's small, but it's clean and private. You'll work 6 days a week, 8 hours a day. Sundays off. I'll pay you $15 an hour to start. If you work out, we'll talk about raising that. Lily did the math quickly in her head. That was more money than she'd made at her last job. Real money. Money that could help her build a real life. Your first week's pay will be held as a deposit, Mrs. Hayes continued. After that, you'll get paid every Friday. You'll take your meals in the main house with Jake and me. No arguments on that. I cook too much anyway. I don't know what to say, Lily said, her voice shaking. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is a working ranch. The days start early and end late. It's not glamorous. I don't need glamorous, I just need a chance. Mrs. Hayes's expression softened slightly. Then you'll fit in just fine here. Jake, show her to the cottage. Let her get settled. She can start work tomorrow morning. Yes, ma'am, Jake said. As Mrs. Hayes walked back into the house, Lily felt tears threatening again. But these were different tears. These were relief. Jake gestured toward one of the small cottages. Come on, let's get you set up. They walked across the yard toward the cottage farthest from the main house. It was painted the same white as the main house, with a small porch that had a rocking chair on it. Flowers grew in pots on either side of the door. Jake pulled out a key and unlocked the door, pushing it open. Home sweet home. Lily stepped inside and stopped. It was small, just one main room with a kitchenette in one corner and a door leading to what was probably a bathroom. But it was clean. Really clean. There was a bed with a quilt on it, a small table with 2 chairs, a dresser, and even a bookshelf with some books on it. There were curtains on the windows, a rug on the floor, a lamp on the bedside table. It was more than she'd had in months. There's soap and shampoo in the bathroom, Jake said. Towels, too. If you need anything else, just let me know. I'm in the cottage over there. He pointed out the window toward the other small building. Lily set her bag down slowly on the bed. She ran her hand over the quilt. It was soft and warm. Jake, she said, turning to face him. Why are you doing this? Why are you and Mrs. Hayes helping me? You don't know me. Jake leaned against the doorframe. You want the honest answer? Yes, because somebody helped me when I needed it, and because not helping feels wrong. He paused. Look, I don't know your whole story, and you don't have to tell me, but I know what it's like to feel like the whole world's against you. I know what it's like to need someone to believe in you when you don't even believe in yourself anymore. Lily felt a tear slip down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. Get some rest, Jake said gently. Tomorrow's a new day, fresh start. He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Lily stood in the middle of her new home, still wearing Jake's jacket. She looked around at the small space that was hers. Actually hers. Safe, clean, peaceful. For the first time in months, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. She sat down on the bed, finally letting go of her duffel bag. Then she lay back and stared at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the ranch. Birds singing, wind in the trees, the distant sound of cattle. No sirens, no shouting, no fear, just peace. She closed her eyes and, for the first time in longer than she could remember, she slept without nightmares. The rooster's crow woke her at dawn. For a moment, Lily didn't know where she was. She sat up quickly, heart racing, ready to run. Then she remembered. The ranch, the cottage, safety. She lay back down, breathing slowly until her heartbeat returned to normal. This was going to take time. The fear didn't just disappear because she was somewhere new. Sunlight was streaming through the curtains, painting golden stripes across the wooden floor. She could smell coffee from somewhere. The main house, probably. She got up and looked at herself in the small mirror hanging on the wall. Her hair was a mess. She had dark circles under her eyes. Her dress was wrinkled from sleeping in it. She looked tired and worn down, but she was clean. She'd taken a long shower last night, standing under the hot water until it ran cold. It had felt like washing away months of fear and dirt and shame. Someone knocked on the door. "Lily, you awake?" It was Jake's voice. "Yeah, just a minute." She smoothed down her dress as best she could and opened the door. Jake stood on the porch holding 2 mugs of coffee. He handed her one. "Figured you might need this. Mrs. Hayes has breakfast ready in the main house. She sent me to fetch you." Lily took the coffee gratefully. "What time is it?" 6:30. "Ranch hours start early. You'll get used to it." They walked across the yard together. The morning air was cool and fresh. Everything felt new and clean, like the world had been washed overnight. Inside the main house, the kitchen was warm and smelled amazing. Mrs. Hayes stood at the stove, flipping pancakes. The table was already set with plates, syrup, butter, and a bowl of fresh strawberries. "Sit," Mrs. Hayes ordered, pointing to a chair. "You look half-starved." Lily sat down at the table, feeling awkward. She wasn't used to this, people being kind without wanting something in return. Mrs. Hayes brought over a plate stacked high with pancakes and set it in front of her. "Eat up. You'll need your strength today." Jake sat down across from her with his own plate. "Don't worry, it's not all hard work. Some of it's actually fun." "Define fun," Mrs. Hayes said with a slight smile as she joined them at the table. They ate together, and it felt surprisingly normal. Mrs. Hayes asked simple questions about where she was from, nothing too personal. Jake told a story about a cow that had escaped last week and led him on a chase for 2 hours. When breakfast was done, Mrs. Hayes stood up. "All right, Lily, let me show you around and explain what needs doing." They spent the next hour walking around the ranch. Mrs. Hayes showed her everything. The chicken coop that needed fresh water and feed every morning, the barn where the horses were kept, the tack room that desperately needed organizing, and the garden behind the house that was overflowing with vegetables. "I'm not as young as I used to be," Mrs. Hayes admitted as they walked. "Things have gotten a bit out of hand around here. Jake handles the cattle and the heavy work, but I need help with everything else." Lily looked around at all of it. "I can do this. All of it. I believe you can." Mrs. Hayes stopped and turned to face her. "But I want you to promise me something." "What's that?" "If you feel overwhelmed, if something's too much, you tell me. Don't push yourself until you break. That helps nobody." "I promise." "Good. Now let's start with something simple. The chickens need feeding, and then we'll tackle that tack room." The work was physical and tiring, but Lily threw herself into it. It felt good to be busy, to have a purpose, to focus on simple tasks instead of being trapped in her own head. The chickens were funny and easier to manage than she'd expected. She scattered feed and collected eggs, talking to them softly as she worked. They clucked around her feet completely unafraid. The tack room was a different story. It was chaos. Saddles, bridles, ropes, and equipment were piled everywhere with no organization at all. "This hasn't been properly sorted in about 5 years," Mrs. Hayes admitted, looking embarrassed. "I kept meaning to do it, but there's always something else that needs attention." "I'll fix it," Lily said with confidence. This was something she was actually good at. Organizing. Creating order from chaos. She spent the rest of the morning working on the tack room. She sorted everything by type, cleaned off the dusty shelves, and started putting things in logical places. It was satisfying work, seeing progress happen right in front of her eyes. At noon, Mrs. Hayes brought her a sandwich and lemonade. "You're making good progress. Thank you. I like this kind of work. It's straightforward. You can see what you've accomplished," Mrs. Hayes nodded. "That's good thinking." She paused. "Jake mentioned you might have some trouble from your past. An ex-partner?" Lily's hands stilled on the bridle she was holding. He shouldn't have said anything. He was right to tell me. This is my ranch. I need to know if there might be trouble coming. Mrs. Hayes's voice was firm but not angry. "I'm not judging you, but I need you to be honest with me." Lily set down the bridle and faced her. "I left someone who hurt me. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I used cash for everything. I was careful, but I can't promise he won't somehow figure it out." "What's his name?" Lily hesitated. Saying his name out loud felt dangerous, like it might summon him somehow. David Richardson." Mrs. Hayes pulled out her phone and typed something. I'm sending this to Sheriff Bradley. He's a friend. If this David shows up in town, we'll know about it. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. You work for me now. That means you're under my protection. Mrs. Hayes looked at her directly, and I protect what's mine. Something in Lily's chest loosened at those words. Protection. When was the last time she'd felt protected? Now finish your lunch, Mrs. Hayes continued. Then take a break. It's hot this afternoon. We'll do lighter work until it cools down. The afternoon passed in a blur of simple tasks: watering the garden, pulling weeds, washing out water troughs. Nothing too difficult, but all of it necessary. By the time the sun started setting, Lily was exhausted, but in a good way. Her muscles ached, but it was the ache of honest work, not the ache of running or hiding or being hurt. At dinner, Jake told more stories that made her laugh. Mrs. Hayes complained about the town council meeting she had to attend next week. It felt like family, like belonging. When she finally returned to her cottage that night, Lily stood on the porch for a moment, looking up at the stars. There were so many of them here, away from city lights. The sky was full of tiny points of light, endless and beautiful. She thought about the women at the festival, about their cruel words and judgmental looks, about the teenager filming her humiliation. And she thought about Jake draping his jacket around her shoulders, about Mrs. Hayes offering her a chance, about this small cottage that felt more like home than anywhere had in years. Maybe the world wasn't entirely cruel. Maybe there were still good people in it, people who helped without expecting anything in return. She went inside and got ready for bed. As she lay down, she heard an owl hooting somewhere in the distance. The sound was lonely, but also somehow comforting. Tomorrow she would wake up and do it all again. Work hard, prove herself, build a new life piece by piece. For the first time in months, maybe years, she had hope, and hope, she was learning, was a powerful thing. She fell asleep with Jake's jacket hanging on the back of a chair, a reminder that kindness still existed in the world, that she deserved kindness, that she was worth saving. Outside, the stars kept shining. The ranch settled into its nighttime rhythms, and in her small cottage, Lily slept peacefully, dreaming of mornings yet to come and a future that might actually be bright. 3 weeks passed like pages turning in a book. Each day brought new routines, new skills, and small victories that added up to something bigger. Lily learned the rhythm of ranch life. Wake at dawn, feed the chickens, help Mrs. Hayes with breakfast, spend the morning working on whatever needed attention, break for lunch, afternoon tasks, dinner together, evening chores, sleep. It was simple and predictable, and she loved it. The tack room was completely organized now. Everything had its place, labeled and easy to find. Mrs. Hayes had been so impressed that she'd asked Lily to tackle the barn storage next. But the biggest change was in Lily herself. She was eating regular meals now, gaining back the weight she'd lost. Her skin had color in it again. The constant fear that had lived in her chest was slowly fading, replaced by something that felt almost like peace. She was also getting to know the animals. The chickens recognized her now and would come running when they saw her. There was one hen, a fat brown one she'd named Henrietta, who followed her around like a puppy. The horses were her favorite, though. There were 5 of them, 3 work horses and 2 that Mrs. Hayes kept for riding. Lily had been nervous around them at first. They were so big and powerful. But Jake had shown her how to approach them, how to read their body language, how to earn their trust. Now she could brush them down and clean their hooves without fear. There was something calming about working with the horses. They didn't judge. They didn't ask questions about her past. They just accepted her. One afternoon, Jake found her in the stable talking to Thunder, a big gray gelding. "You're good with them," he said, leaning against the stall door. "They're easier than people," Lily admitted. "Running the brush along Thunder's neck, that's the truth." Jake watched her work for a moment. "You ever ridden before?" "No, never had the chance. Want to learn?" Lily paused, looking at Thunder's size. He had to be 16 hands high at least. "I don't know. What if I fall off?" "Then you get back on. That's how it works." Jake smiled. "Come on, I'll teach you. Thunder here is gentle as a kitten." So began the riding lessons. Jake was patient, showing her how to saddle Thunder properly, how to mount, how to sit, how to hold the reins. The first time Thunder moved with her on his back, she nearly panicked. But Jake was right there, talking her through it. Just breathe. Move with him, not against him. That's it. You're doing great. By the end of that first lesson, she was walking Thunder around the paddock on her own. It felt like flying. Like freedom. Mrs. Hayes watched from the fence, smiling. You're a natural. The riding lessons became a regular thing. Every evening after the work was done, Jake would meet her at the stable and they'd ride out into the fields. He showed her the boundaries of the ranch, pointed out landmarks, taught her how to read the land. During these rides, they talked. Really talked. Jake told her about his past, about the mistakes he'd made, about the drinking problem that had cost him everything until Mrs. Hayes gave him a chance to rebuild. I was angry at the world, he admitted one evening as they sat on their horses watching the sunset. Thought everyone was against me. Took me a long time to realize I was my own worst enemy. How did you change? Lily asked. Mrs. Hayes, she didn't just give me a job. She gave me responsibility, made me accountable. But she also believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. He looked over at her. Same thing she's doing for you. Lily had started to notice that Mrs. Hayes was teaching her more than just ranch work. She was teaching her about bookkeeping, showing her how to track expenses and income, how to manage inventory, how to plan ahead for different seasons. You're smart, Mrs. Hayes said one day as they worked on the ranch's financial records together. Sharp mind. You could do more than manual labor if you wanted. I like the manual labor, Lily said. It's honest work. It is. But there's no reason you can't do both. The ranch needs someone to manage the business side. My eyes aren't what they used to be and I'm tired of staring at spreadsheets. You want me to do your bookkeeping? I want you to learn it. Then yes, I'll pay you more to take it over. Mrs. Hayes looked at her over her reading glasses. You're not just passing through here, are you? You're thinking about staying. Lily realized it was true. She was thinking about staying. This place had become home without her noticing. I'd like to stay, she said quietly, if you'll have me. Then we'll make it official. After your 3-month trial period, we'll draw up a proper contract. Benefits and everything. That night, Lily stood in front of the mirror in her cottage. She was wearing new clothes now. Bought with her first paycheck. Jeans that fit properly. T-shirts without holes. Real work boots that didn't hurt her feet. She looked like a different person. Healthy, strong. Like someone who belonged. But she was still carrying the weight of her past. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart would race. Every time a car drove down the ranch's driveway, she would tense up. She couldn't shake the feeling that David would somehow find her. She hadn't heard from him since she'd left. Her old phone number was disconnected. Her social media accounts were deleted. She'd covered her tracks as best she could, but fear didn't listen to logic. One Saturday, Mrs. Hayes took her into town for supplies. Lily had been avoiding town since that first day at the festival. The memory of those women's cruelty still stung. Can't avoid it forever, Mrs. Hayes said practically. Besides, you need to show them you're not going anywhere. Walking through the grocery store, Lily kept her head high even though she felt people staring. She helped Mrs. Hayes pick out vegetables and load the cart. She was polite to the cashier, and then she saw one of the women from the festival in the next aisle. The one who'd laughed at her dress and told her to go to the church. Their eyes met. The woman's face went red. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then closed it again. She looked away and hurried off. Progress, Mrs. Hayes said quietly. At the diner, they ran into Jake having coffee. He waved them over to his booth. Join me. I'm celebrating. Celebrating what? Lily asked as she slid into the booth. The Peterson contract came through. We're going to be boarding their horses starting next month. That's 10 horses, Lily. 10. That's good money for the ranch. Mrs. Hayes smiled. That's wonderful news. We'll need to expand the stables. Already talked to the contractor. He can start next week. Jake looked at Lily. Means more work for all of us, but also means the ranch is growing. Means job security. Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest. Job security. Future plans. Being included in those plans, this was what normal felt like. This was what life could be when you weren't just surviving, when you were actually living. They ordered lunch and talked about the expansion plans. Jake sketched out ideas on a napkin. Mrs. Hayes worried about costs but was clearly excited. Lily mostly listened, soaking in the feeling of being part of something. As they left the diner, Lily noticed the teenager who'd filmed her at the festival sitting with friends in a booth. The girl saw her and quickly looked down at her table, shame written all over her face. Lily could have ignored her, Could have walked past without acknowledgement, but something made her stop. She walked over to the booth. The teenager looked up, fear in her eyes. "I just wanted to say," Lily began, "that I hope you learned something from that day." The girl's face crumbled. "I'm so sorry. I was being awful. I deleted the video. I swear I did." "I'm really, really sorry," Lily nodded. "Thank you for that. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after." She walked away feeling lighter somehow, like she'd let go of something heavy she'd been carrying. In the truck on the way back to the ranch, Mrs. Hayes reached over and patted her hand. "You handled that well." "I just realized," Lily said slowly, "that holding on to anger was keeping me stuck. I want to move forward." "That's wise thinking." That evening, after all the work was done, Lily sat on her cottage porch in the rocking chair. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Thunder whinnied from the stable. The chickens were settling in for the night. Jake walked across the yard and climbed the porch steps. "Mind if I join you?" "Not at all." He sat down on the porch rail. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just watching the day end. "You're different than when you first got here," Jake finally said. "How so?" "You smile now." "Real smiles. Not the kind where you're trying to convince yourself everything's okay." Lily thought about that. "I guess I feel different, safer, like I can actually breathe." "That's good." "That's real good," he paused. "You know, whatever happened before, whatever you left behind, it doesn't define you. You get to decide who you are now. Is that what you did? Every single day. Some days are easier than others. But yeah, that's what I do." The stars were coming out now, one by one. Lily felt like she was waking up from a long nightmare. The past was still there, still part of her story. But it didn't have to be the whole story. She had a job. A home, people who cared about her. A future that looked bright, and that was worth fighting for. 2 months after arriving at the ranch, Lily's life had settled into something that felt almost normal. She had friends now. Real friends. The woman who ran the feed store knew her by name. The veterinarian who came to check on the horses chatted with her about the weather. She was becoming part of the community. She should have known it wouldn't last. It started with a text message on a Tuesday afternoon. Lily was in the barn organizing feed bags when her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, expecting maybe a message from Mrs. Hayes about dinner plans. The number was blocked. Her stomach dropped before she even opened it. "Found you." Just 2 words. But they were enough to make her hands shake so badly she almost dropped the phone. Another message came through. "Did you really think you could hide from me?" Then another. "I'm coming for you." Lily's legs gave out. She sank down onto a hay bale, staring at the screen. How had he found her? She'd been so careful. She'd used cash. Changed her number. Deleted everything. But somehow David had tracked her down. More messages came flooding in over the next few minutes. Angry messages. Threatening messages. Messages that made her feel like she was back in that apartment, trapped and terrified. "You belong to me. You can't just leave. I'll make you sorry." She wanted to throw the phone across the barn, wanted to run, wanted to disappear again, but where would she go? She'd already run as far as she could. Jake found her 20 minutes later, still sitting on the hay bale staring at nothing. "Hey, Lily, Mrs. Hayes is looking for—" He stopped mid-sentence when he saw her face. "What's wrong?" She couldn't speak. She just held out the phone. Jake took it and scrolled through the messages. His jaw tightened with each one he read. "How long has this been going on?" "Just started today, just now." Her voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. "Does he know where you are exactly?" "I don't know, maybe. He must have figured out what town I'm in, at least." Jake handed back the phone and pulled out his own. "I'm calling the sheriff." "No, don't. That'll just make it worse." "Lily, these are threats. This is harassment. We need to document this." "You don't understand. David doesn't care about police or laws or any of that. It'll just make him angrier." Jake knelt down in front of her so they were eye level. "Listen to me. You're not alone this time. You've got people who will stand with you. We're not letting anything happen to you." Lily wanted to believe him, but she knew David. She knew what he was capable of when he was angry. And these messages meant he was very, very angry. Sheriff Bradley arrived at the ranch within an hour. He was a big man in his 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. He took pictures of all the messages and asked Lily questions about David, about their relationship, about past incidents. It was humiliating having to explain it all. The times David had grabbed her too hard, leaving bruises. The way he'd isolated her from friends and family. The night he'd thrown a glass at her head. The constant surveillance of her phone and whereabouts. "Did you ever file a police report?" Sheriff Bradley asked. "Once, 3 years ago. But I dropped it. He convinced me it was my fault, that I'd provoked him." The sheriff nodded, his expression grim. Classic pattern. "And let me guess, after you dropped the charges, things got better for a while?" "For a few months. Then it started again. Worse than before. They always do." Sheriff Bradley closed his notebook. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. First, we're filing for a restraining order. These messages give us plenty of cause. Second, I'm going to alert my deputies to be on the lookout for anyone matching his description. Third, you need to keep your phone on and with you at all times. If he contacts you again, screenshot it and call me immediately." "Will a restraining order even help?" Lily asked. "He's not the type to care about a piece of paper." "No, but it gives us legal grounds to arrest him if he shows up. And it creates a paper trail." The sheriff stood up. "Look, Miss Lily, I've dealt with cases like this before. The fact that you're taking it seriously and reporting it puts you ahead of where a lot of victims are. You're doing the right thing." After the sheriff left, Mrs. Hayes insisted Lily come stay in the main house. "I've got 3 spare bedrooms. Pick one. You're not staying alone in that cottage until this is settled. I can't just, you can and you will. This isn't up for debate." That night, Lily lay in one of Mrs. Hayes' guest rooms, staring at the ceiling. She'd pulled the curtains closed tight. She'd checked the locks on the windows twice. Her phone was on the nightstand, volume turned up high. Every little sound made her jump. The house settling. The wind in the trees. A dog barking somewhere in the distance. She'd been stupid to think she could escape. Stupid to think she could start over. David always won. He always found a way to control her, even from hundreds of miles away. The messages continued over the next few days. Sometimes angry, sometimes sweet and apologizing, sometimes threatening. It was the cycle she knew so well. The cycle that had kept her trapped for years. "Baby, I'm sorry. I just miss you. You're making me do this. Come home and I'll forgive you. If I can't have you, nobody will." She stopped sleeping properly, stopped eating much. The fear that had finally started to fade came roaring back, stronger than ever. Jake noticed. Everyone noticed. "You can't let him win like this," Jake said one evening as they sat on Mrs. Hayes' porch. "He's in your head again. It's not that simple. I know it's not. But you're giving him power he doesn't actually have. He's not here. He doesn't know exactly where you are. These are just words. Words can hurt. They can. But they can't physically harm you. And we're not going to let him get close enough to do that." On Friday, 5 days after the first message, something changed. The messages stopped being general threats and got specific. "Nice little ranch you've got there." Lily's blood ran cold. He knew where she was. She showed Jake immediately. He called the sheriff while she tried not to hyperventilate. "That's it," Mrs. Hayes declared. "We're going into town. Sheriff Bradley needs to see you in person, and we're getting that restraining order filed today. No more waiting." The 3 of them drove into Clearwater. At the sheriff's office, they filed all the paperwork. The secretary, a woman named Betty, was kind and efficient, printing forms and making copies without asking invasive questions. As they were leaving, they ran into the woman from the festival. Diane, the mayor's wife. She was coming into the building with her daughter. Diane stopped when she saw them. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then Diane spoke. "I heard you were having some trouble with an ex." Lily tensed, ready for judgment or mockery. But Diane's face was serious. "My sister went through something similar. It's awful, terrifying." She paused. "I wanted to apologize for how I treated you when you first arrived. It was cruel and wrong. You didn't deserve that." Lily was so surprised she didn't know what to say. "Thank you," Mrs. Hayes said firmly. "That takes character to admit." Diane nodded. "If you need anything, please let me know. My husband is the mayor. We have connections, resources. We can help." After she left, Lily felt something shift inside her. Maybe this town wasn't entirely against her. Maybe there were more good people here than she'd thought. That evening, they had an unexpected visitor. Sheriff Bradley showed up at the ranch with news. "We've got eyes on him," he said. "David Richardson was spotted at a gas station about 60 miles from here this afternoon. He's driving a black Ford pickup. And we've got the license plate. Every law enforcement agency in 3 counties is watching for him. So he is coming here, Lily said, her worst fear confirmed. Looks that way. But here's the thing. The moment he crosses into this county, we can pick him up for violating the restraining order. He won't get near this ranch. What if you miss him? What if he finds another way? Then we deal with it. But Lily, you're not alone. You've got me, my deputies, and every person on this ranch watching out for you. That man is not going to hurt you again. Jake stepped forward. She's got more than that. She's got this whole town. And as Lily looked around at these people who'd become her family, she realized he was right. She wasn't the same frightened woman who'd stepped off that bus 2 months ago. This time she had something to fight for, and she wasn't facing it alone. The past was catching up. But this time she was ready. Word spread through Clearwater faster than wildfire. In a small town, news always traveled quickly. But this was different. This wasn't gossip. This was people looking out for one of their own. By Saturday morning, everyone knew that someone was coming to town to hurt Lily, and they weren't having it. The first sign came when Jake answered a knock on the door of the main house. It was Tom Weaver, who owned the ranch to the east. Heard you might have some trouble coming, Tom said, shifting his hat in his hands. Thought you should know I've got 4 ranch hands who used to be military. They're keeping an eye on the eastern approach road. Anyone strange comes through, we'll know about it. Before Jake could respond, another truck pulled up. Then another. And another. Within an hour, there were 12 people at the ranch. Some brought food. Some brought their presents. All brought support. The woman from the feed store, Helen, arrived with her husband. We're setting up a phone tree, she explained to Lily. Anyone sees anything suspicious, they call the next person on the list. Within 5 minutes, the whole town will know. Diane showed up with her husband, the mayor. I've called an emergency town council meeting, he said. We're putting together a community watch. Nobody threatening one of our residents is getting past us. Lily stood on the porch of the main house, overwhelmed. I don't understand. Why are you all doing this? Mrs. Hayes put an arm around her shoulders. Because this is what community means. When one of us is in trouble, all of us step up. But most of these people don't even know me. They know enough, Helen said firmly. They know you're a young woman being threatened by someone who hurt you. That's all they need to know. The teenager from the festival, whose name turned out to be Amy, came by with her mother. She was crying when she approached Lily. I'm so sorry for what I did that first day, Amy said, wiping her eyes. I was mean and stupid. But I want to help now. Me and my friends have been posting on social media, warning people to watch for a black Ford truck with Nevada plates. We've got hundreds of shares already. Lily hugged her. Thank you. That means a lot. Even the women from the festival showed up. They didn't say much, but they brought casseroles and desserts. One of them, the one named Margaret, pressed an envelope into Lily's hand. For legal fees. Or whatever you need, Margaret said quietly. We took up a collection. It's not much, but it's something. Inside was $800 in cash. Sheriff Bradley coordinated everything from the ranch. He'd set up a command post in Mrs. Hayes' dining room, with maps and radios, and a direct line to the state police. This is unprecedented, he admitted to Mrs. Hayes. I've never seen a community response like this. That's because you usually deal with people hiding behind closed doors, Mrs. Hayes replied. This time we're standing in the daylight. The day passed in a strange mixture of tension and warmth. People came and went. Some stayed, camping out in the yard, saying they weren't leaving until the threat was over. Jake organized them into shifts, making sure someone was always watching the roads. Lily tried to work to keep busy, but Mrs. Hayes wouldn't let her leave the house. You stay where we can see you, she insisted. So Lily helped make food for all the volunteers instead. She made sandwiches and coffee and tried not to think about David getting closer with every hour that passed. As evening approached, Sheriff Bradley's radio crackled. Sheriff, this is Deputy Chen. Black Ford pickup. Nevada plates just entered the county on Highway 29. We're following at a distance. Everyone in the house went silent. Do not approach, Sheriff Bradley ordered. Just track him. Let me know where he goes. The next 15 minutes felt like hours. Lily sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. Jake stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder. Mrs. Hayes sat across from her, holding her hand. The radio crackled again. Sheriff, he's stopping at the gas station on Main Street. All units move in. Do it quietly. Don't spook him until we're in position. They could hear everything through the radio. Deputy voices, car doors, footsteps. Then Sheriff Bradley's voice, loud and clear. David Richardson, you're under arrest for violating a restraining order. Put your hands where I can see them. There was a commotion, shouting. More voices. Suspect is in custody. I repeat, suspect is in custody. Lily let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Jake squeezed her shoulder. Mrs. Hayes' eyes filled with tears. It's over, Mrs. Hayes whispered. He can't hurt you now, but it wasn't quite over yet. An hour later, Sheriff Bradley returned to the ranch. He looked tired but satisfied. He's in a cell. Bail is set high. He won't be getting out anytime soon. What happens now? Lily asked. Now we build a case. With all those threatening messages, the restraining order violation, and the fact that he crossed state lines to do it, we've got enough for serious charges. The district attorney is already looking at it. Will I have to testify? Probably, but you won't be alone. We've got documentation, evidence, and, he smiled slightly, about 50 people willing to testify about the community threat and response. Jake walked Sheriff Bradley out to his car. Through the window, Lily could see them talking. When Jake came back in, he looked thoughtful. What did he say? Lily asked. He said what happened today was remarkable. Said in all his years in law enforcement, he's never seen a community mobilize like that. Jake sat down beside her. He also said you should be proud. A lot of people in your situation would have kept hiding, kept running, but you stood your ground. You let people help you. That takes courage. That night, most of the volunteers went home, but some stayed. Tom and his ranch hands set up tents in the yard. The mayor's wife insisted on staying in one of the guest rooms, saying she'd feel better being there. Lily couldn't sleep. She kept replaying everything in her mind. The fear, the messages, the way the entire town had shown up to protect her. Around midnight, she went downstairs and found Mrs. Hayes sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. Can't sleep either? Mrs. Hayes asked. Lily shook her head and sat down. I keep thinking about how different today could have gone. If I'd been alone. If I'd still been in that cottage by myself. But you weren't alone. That's the point. Why did you all do it? Why did so many people care? Mrs. Hayes was quiet for a moment, thinking. You know, when I was younger, I went through something hard. My first husband, he wasn't a good man. Not like David, but not good. I felt trapped. Alone. One day, my neighbor, old Mrs. Chen, she saw a bruise on my arm. She didn't ask questions. She just said my door is always open. Day or night, what did you do? I left. Showed up at her door at 2 a.m. with a black eye and nowhere to go. She took me in. Helped me file for divorce. Stood by me through all of it. Mrs. Hayes smiled at the memory. She told me, someone helped me once when I needed it. Now I'm helping you. One day you'll help someone else. That's how the chain works. So I'm part of your chain. You're part of all our chains. Every person who showed up today, they've all been helped by someone at some point. And now they're paying it forward. Mrs. Hayes reached across and took Lily's hand. The world has plenty of people like David. People who hurt and control and destroy. But it also has people like us. People who build and protect and care, and there are more of us than there are of them. Lily felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I was so scared. I know. Fear is a reasonable response to danger, but so is asking for help. So is accepting help when it's offered. You did both those things. That's why you're sitting here safe right now instead of running again. They sat together in the quiet kitchen, drinking tea and talking until the sun started to rise. And for the first time since those first threatening messages arrived, Lily felt like she could breathe fully. David was in jail. The community had proven they had her back. She had people who cared about her, who would stand between her and harm. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was a survivor, and she was home. Outside, the roosters started their morning song. The ranch was waking up. A new day was beginning, and this time it was truly a new beginning. 6 months later, spring arrived in Clearwater with an explosion of color and life. The hills turned green. Wildflowers bloomed everywhere. The ranch buzzed with activity as new foals were born and the expansion project was completed. Lily stood in front of the mirror in her cottage, looking at herself. She was wearing a new dress, a beautiful sky blue one that she'd bought for the occasion. Her hair was longer now, healthy and shining. Her face had filled out. She looked like someone who slept well at night. Like someone who smiled often. She looked happy. Today was the Spring Rodeo and Festival, the biggest event of the year in Clearwater. The same festival where she'd first arrived, scared and broken and alone, but she wasn't that person anymore. There was a knock on her door. "Lily, you about ready?" Jake's voice called through the wood. She took one last look in the mirror, then opened the door. Jake stood on the porch wearing clean jeans, a button-up shirt, and polished boots. His hat was in his hands. "You look beautiful," he said, and the way he said it made her blush. Things had changed between them over the past few months. Slowly, carefully, they'd gone from friends to something more. He'd never pushed, never demanded. He'd just been there, steady and patient, waiting for her to be ready. Their first kiss had happened a month ago on a quiet evening ride. It had been soft and sweet and perfect. "You don't look too bad yourself," she replied with a smile. They walked together toward his truck. Mrs. Hayes was already waiting by the vehicle, dressed in her best Western wear. "About time you two showed up," she said, but she was smiling. "We're going to be late." The drive into town was filled with easy conversation and laughter. Lily watched the familiar landscape pass by through the window. This place that had been so foreign 6 months ago now felt like home in every way that mattered. When they arrived at the town square, it was already packed with people. The festival was in full swing, with the same colorful banners, the same food tents, the same energy as before. But this time, everything was different. This time, when Lily walked through the crowd, people called out greetings. "Hey, Lily! Looking good. Saved you a seat at our table." Helen from the feed store rushed over to hug her. "You have to try the apple pie this year. I finally got the recipe right." Tom and his wife waved from the barbecue line. "Lily, Jake, come sit with us later." Even Amy the teenager came bouncing over with her friends. "Miss Lily, will you judge the baking contest, please? We need someone with good taste." It was overwhelming in the best possible way. This was what belonging felt like. They made their way to the main tent where tables were set up for dinner. And there at the entrance stood Diane and her group of friends. The same women who had turned Lily away 6 months ago. For a moment, Lily tensed. Old instincts die hard, but Diane stepped forward with a genuine smile. "Lily, I'm so glad you're here. We saved you seats at our table. If you'd like to join us." "I'd like that," Lily said. During dinner, Lily found herself laughing and talking with these women who had once judged her so harshly. They asked about the ranch, about her bookkeeping work, about her plans for the future. Margaret leaned over at one point. "I hope you know how much this town has learned from you," she said quietly. "How you handled everything. Your courage. Your grace. You made us all better people." "I didn't do anything special," Lily protested. "Yes, you did. You showed us what real strength looks like." After dinner, there was music and dancing. Jake led Lily out to the makeshift dance floor under the stars. "Remember what you promised me 6 months ago?" he asked as they swayed to the music. "What's that?" "You saved me a dance." "I'm finally collecting." She laughed and rested her head against his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat. "I guess you are." As they danced, Lily looked around at all the faces she'd come to know. The sheriff chatting with the mayor, Mrs. Hayes laughing with Tom's wife, Amy and her friends taking selfies. The whole community together celebrating life. This was her community now. Her people. Her home. "What are you thinking about?" Jake asked softly. "About how different everything is. How different I am." "You're not so different. Just happier. More yourself." "I feel more myself," she admitted. "For the first time in years, I feel like I know who I am." The song ended and another began. But they kept dancing. Later, as the evening wound down, Mrs. Hayes found them sitting on a bench watching the festivities. "I have something for you," she said.